Hey everybody, this is Tom. We're having a blessing to have this video to watch in this series for the next 6 weeks by Max Lucado. You'll get through this, hope and help for turbulent times, and we certainly have turbulent times right now. Before we begin, I want to pray, and I want to base that prayer on a couple of passages from Psalm 138. It says, I give thanks to you, O Lord, with all my heart. I will sing your praises before the gods. I bow before your holy temple as I worship. I praise your name for your unfailing love and faithfulness. And the Lord will work out his plans for my life, for your faithful love, O Lord, endures forever. It's such an important passage for the Lord working out his plans for our lives. And we'll talk a little bit more about that verse, his faithful love endures forever. It's critical, I think, that you remember that. It's the verse that's the most written verse throughout the Bible. So the Bible has clearly written that life would include many trials, so it shouldn't be a surprise to us what we're going through now. But perhaps you may say, but this is worse than anything I've ever experienced, and I will say it is. I lived over 70 years, and it's the worst combination of factors that I've ever seen. But God is with us, and we'll see that. We're going to learn about that through the story of Joseph. In these 6 sessions, you'll learn that God is ready and able to help you no matter what. God's presence is always with us, and one man has said, when you love the Lord, there's no joy like God's presence. Just a little bit of review for other people that you know loved God and served him. Moses was violently opposed by the people he spent his life loving and trying to lead. David learned to dodge spears, and his own son, it's like Joseph's family, tried to kill him and take his throne. Even Jesus' family thought he was crazy. There's a quote from my Bible where it says about him, he's out of his mind. Jeremiah was beaten and thrown into a pit, much like Joseph. Stephen, an early church leader, was stoned to death. And then there's Joseph, and we'll talk about him. But I want to show you some slides that will relate to this. And pictures are worth 1,000 words. And I want you to see these slides and reflect on them. Life is messy. It's not linear. It's not logical. And the book, the Bible, reflects that. The years of our life from Psalm 90:10 are 70, or even by reason of strength 80, yet their span is but toil and trouble. They are soon gone, and we fly away. And I like the pictures of these stages of life, because we're all in a different stage right now. But we all need to recognize that there's going to be toil and trouble in our lives. This is a slide that really makes it clear what we think when we're younger is the top, how life is supposed to go, we think. But how life actually goes, it's all squiggly line. It's ups and downs and roundabouts. So that's how it really goes. Life is not linear. You have ups and downs, but it's how you deal with the troughs that defines you. And I want to say it's also how you deal with the ups, because I've been reading in the Old Testament recently, and when some of the kings of Judah became powerful through God's leading them, they forsook God. So it's really and truly the ups and downs is what defines you. When you face trials, God will be with you, Isaiah said in chapter 43, verse 2. When you go through deep waters, I will be with you. That's written big because to be emphasized. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. So God's presence. You might say this prayer every day when you're especially feeling troubled. God, help me to be aware of your presence. I know your presence is with me, but sometimes I just don't feel it. Help me be aware. David Powlison, remember that the most repeated sentence in the entire Bible is, His steadfast love endures forever. God thought it was worth repeating, and it's worth our repeating too. Say it out loud with me. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never, never come to an end. That's worth repeating and worth saying out loud. Now, we've heard the story of Joseph many, many times. We say, well, Joseph came and his brothers were upset. And they said, let's kill him. And the other brothers said, no, let's not kill him. We'll just throw him in this pit. Maybe these travelers that are coming by, we can sell them into slavery. And I've thought about that, but this picture to me recounts what the terror must have been like for Joseph. He's kicking, he's screaming. This is a horrible, dirty, filthy pit he's being thrown into by his own family. And just imagine. And there are just people in the world. I wondered what percentage of people today feel like their own family is against them, like Joseph had to feel at that time. And in my research, I found that in one study, 40% of the participants responded that they have experienced significant loss of affection from family. And you might be one of them. It can be your physical family, like it was in Joseph's case, or it may be even your church family. But how you respond is what's going to define you. When you consider the road of life that you've traveled thus far, how has your family caused you pain and heartache? Why do you think these wounds hurt so deeply? And the psalmist wrote about that. This was very comforting to me once when a member of my church family, decades ago when we lived in Vermont, did some terribly hurtful things to Catherine and I. And it says, for it was not an enemy that reproached me, then I could have borne it. Neither was it he that hated me that did magnify himself against me. Then I would have hid myself. But it was thou, a man, mine equal, my guide, my mentor, and my acquaintance. And we took sweet counsel together and walked into the house of the Lord in good company. So you can be hurt more deeply by church family and blood family, physical family, than anyone else. And that's what happened to Joseph. I hope you watch every one of these 6 because it's going to make a difference in your life. It's such a timely series. And there are many ways we can respond when we are thrown into the pit, like Catherine and I were, we thought, many years ago. And I'm going to have you ponder some questions as I go through the rest of this between now and next week, because pondering, contemplating, reflecting, without background noise, without the radio on, without the TV on, but just silently thinking about some of these things that I'm going to give you to think about. You consider it your homework, but it's a habit to get into that really will help transform you. There might be ways, many ways that you can respond, but one of them should not be anger. Psalm 4:4, don't sin by letting anger control you. Think about it overnight and remain silent. That's so important when somebody hurts you. And I've had criticism many criticisms over my lifetime, and they've been helpful to me when I haven't been defensive and thought about them overnight and reflected on them. Either way, people were trying to help me. But our first tendency is defend ourselves and be angry. So I want to encourage you not to do that, as the psalmist says. Every season of our life serves a purpose. A purpose. Appreciate where you are now. That's the thing. What we can do right now is think about, what purpose am I getting out of this? This terrible depression that I have, that I can't worship with my brothers and sisters in the air-conditioned building. But we can worship together outside, and that's a blessing. But I just want you to do that. Think about, ask God, what is the purpose for this in your own personal life? In the video series, Max is saying, and we'll get to a slide on that, God will use this mess for good. And it is a mess that we're having right now. As I've been trying to keep in touch with the brethren here through text, emails, and calls, I got this response from one of the sisters. One especially good thing about this time is that it has allowed us plenty of time for Bible study. I've really enjoyed my time reading God's Word, and I find I'm reading beyond my planned session and exploring the Scriptures. Isn't that great? Isn't that wonderful? And I want to also mention Trudy, who's been very sick and in the hospital. She's in a wheelchair now. But she said, Tom, I got to try to find humor in it. I know that there's a purpose. I know that God is using me for His purpose. I know He's strengthening me, and this has brought me closer to Him. There is no life that's free of pain. This woman, Barbara Brown Taylor, said, and this is good as you look back and reflect on the past, I have learned things in the dark that I never could have learned in the light, things that have saved me over and over again, so that there's only one logical conclusion. And this is great to remember when you're feeling so down. I need this. I need darkness as much as I need light. And I want you to think about this and come up with your own answer, but this is the best phrase that I could think of. Paul said while he was in a dirty, filthy, smelly, I hate bad smells, don't you? And cold prison, I have learned. How do you think he's learned it? That's a question for you to ponder. I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. Be content. I know it's hard right now. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound in every circumstance. I have learned the secret. What's that secret? Of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Maybe that's the answer. But you ponder it for yourself. I think that's really important. But Paul said for him, it was Christ's power. Also, do not repay evil for evil. For the people that have maybe put you in a bad situation, be careful to do what's right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So somebody hurt you, and look at we get to the end of it. Look what Joseph did to his brothers. Did he exact vengeance on them? No, he said, I know that you didn't mean this for good, but God did, and it turned out to be good, and Joseph ended up literally saving the world from starvation. So think about that. Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, as you know him, I'm a big fan of his. And he says, there is no normal life that is free of pain. It's the very wrestling with our problems that can be the impetus for our growth. So there's a lot of things we've talked about from different people and from the Bible, showing us, showing you, showing me, that these difficult times are helping us to grow. And as we grow, it will help us to do what? We're here on a mission, to complete the mission that God has given us. Not just to be happy again, but to be strengthened ever stronger to complete the mission that we have in the time that we have left here on this earth. So this is the quote from the video that you've seen. And I think, and we're going to put this on a 3x5 card and put it on our refrigerator and look at it all the time. Because I'm always going to the refrigerator to look for a snack. You will get through this. It won't be painless. It's not. It won't be quick. But God will use this mess for good. In the meantime, don't be foolish or naive, but don't despair either. With God's help, you will get through this. It's always with God's help. Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him. Now that's in all things, bad and good, who have been called according to His purpose. Romans 8:28. We might even consider at the end of this series saying, I don't consider this a bad time. I consider this a time of growth for me. It's not a bad time because God has a purpose. And I'm a Christian and I love God and I want Him to do what He needs to do to make me more like His Son. Now, in the few minutes that we have remaining, I want to just give you a few questions to contemplate. Maybe you can take the time. I'll take a few minutes. We've got about 7 minutes left in this 25-minute lesson, and I didn't want to go over time. Mike Morton gave a great sermon yesterday, by the way, in 25 minutes or less. And that and the sermons Ernie's been given outdoors has me totally convinced that you don't have to speak for 40 or 50 minutes to make a powerful impact on people, because these lessons have been powerful. And I know you've felt it too. So, take time to think about these things, not just, like that. How do you think you would have responded in Joseph's situation? And while you're contemplating that, and these are the things that happen during contemplation, think about the things that have happened to you that have hurt you and been upsetting to you. And how could you have done it differently? How will you do it differently in the future? How can you ask God to help you with that? Number 2, how do you believe God wants you to respond to someone who has hurt you? How do you think God wants you to respond? We'll go back to this slide. I got this backward. I know how to go backwards now. Yeah, that's the slide. As far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Okay? As far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. If you're not at peace, you do what it takes to make peace. Recently, I feel someone had an issue with me. Something wasn't right. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I said, I don't know. I feel something's wrong. Let's get together. And that person said, yeah, that would be great. I appreciate that. And there was something that I had said, and I didn't know it, but I was sorry because it hurt this person. And I never intended that. And that's always that's what I've found over the years, when you may have hurt someone that has been totally unintentional. So get together if you think there's an issue, as far as it depends on you in any situation. As far as it depends on you, be at peace with everyone. It took about 20 years for Joseph to go from his teenage years to becoming a man of influence. So, question for you. How did walking a very hard road over time shape his character and outlook on life? Remember, it said it won't be quick. And now we want to get out and be with people. I enjoy having breakfast with men at Chick-fil-A. Many of you know that. And talking about their life and my life, mutually encouraging one another, visiting in people's homes. We're not doing that. We don't know how long it'll be until we can do that again. What can we do in the meantime? So the shepherds, the staff, were trying to stay in contact by porch visits, standing at the door, calls, text. You can do that as well as we. You've got the directory, and that means a lot. It means a lot. Sometimes, I think particularly if it's a widow, Catherine and I, when we go home together and we rejoice because we are together. That's a blessing. But when a widow or a widower goes home, they go home alone. And that means a lot if you can call them and they can hear another voice. Things like that would really be helpful. I may be getting off the track a little bit here, but I think that's an important point to make. Think about in the past bad situations that have happened to you and spend time thinking about how God brought you through it and what you learned. And ask God, and has God used a journey of struggle in your life to shape you to who you are today? Think about the struggles and the good times. And think about when you've had the good times, like I was speaking about earlier, how you've pretended that you didn't need God anymore because you were in good times. Think about that too. Pondering, contemplation, introspection. It's such a critical part of the Christian life. And then ask yourself, I hope you write this down, what is one small thing I can do to let God begin to reorient my life, my priorities, and my desires? And that's it. There's 2 minutes left, and I want to ask you to pray this prayer with me, and we can pray this prayer regularly. It's a very simple prayer. You know, prayers don't have to be long. Prayers don't have to be eloquent. When our children talk to us as their parents, we love what they ask for, and they don't say it perfectly, but we love them. And we give them what they want. If it's something that we think is good for them, that's what God does with us. So these are the two things. Ask God for a heart of forgiveness for those who intended evil for you but used for good. Ask that. And then thank God for His persistent presence through all the difficulties in life. I guess that would be the takeaway. Through all the difficulties, God never leaves you, ever. Ask Him and thank Him for that, and ask Him one other thing. If you don't feel He's with you, ask Him to make Him aware of it. It might be somebody that calls you today that tells you or texts you, says, I love you, I just wanted you to know that. Thank you. It's the first time I've ever done a class like this, and I hope, and I have prayed with Mike, I've prayed alone before we got here, that it would make a difference in someone's life. I pray that it will. Thank you so much.